These are 16 box office disasters that spent fortunes building elaborate physical sets, only to watch those investments crumble alongside their theatrical runs. From full-scale biblical arcs to 5-mile railroad loops, these films prove that Hollywood's biggest gambles on practical production design don't always pay off. Let's explore the most spectacular set-building failures in cinema history. Peter Bogdanovich's 1975 attempt to revive the golden age of musicals crashed spectacularly with At Long Last Love. $5 to $6 million went into production, but the box office brought back just $1.5 million. Critics savaged the film so thoroughly that Bogdanovich took out newspaper advertisements apologizing for making it. Gene Allen, the Oscar-winning production designer behind My Fair Lady's legendary sets, constructed elaborate Art Deco penthouse environments and recreations of Depression-era high society. Every set detail demanded careful attention because of the film's black and white color scheme. All 16 to 18 Cole Porter songs were performed live on set, which meant integrating complex choreography with these elaborate environments. Allen himself later called it the worst picture ever made. Woody Allen didn't agree. He watched it 3 or 4 times and credited it as inspiration for Everyone Says I Love You. William Friedkin's 1977 thriller Sorcerer cost $21 to $22 million and brought in approximately $9 to $12 million worldwide. Star Wars opened the same month and immediately overshadowed it, which meant the film reportedly lost $42 million. A suspension bridge traversing a jungle river during a monsoon became the film's centerpiece. That single bridge ate up $1 million to construct, with the complete sequence requiring $3 million total. John Box, the legendary production designer who'd worked on Lawrence of Arabia, engineered it with a concealed hydraulic system that let trucks sway dramatically without capsizing. Then things got insane. Production built the first bridge in the Dominican Republic, but the river dried up. Crews dismantled the structure and transported it to the Papaloapan River in Mexico, which also dried up. Sewage pumps rerouted water while massive sprinklers simulated torrential rain. Those trucks fell off the bridge 5 times. Friedkin and his crew contracted gangrene and malaria on location. Roy Scheider said the shoot made Jaws look like a picnic. Remote Mexican jungle became the final resting place for the bridge infrastructure. Today, critics consider Sorcerer an overlooked masterpiece of the 1970s American cinema, with a Criterion Collection restoration available. Francis Ford Coppola's 1982 romantic musical One from the Heart started with a $2 million budget that exploded to $26 million. The box office brought in just $636,796, one of the worst theatrical performances in major studio history. Coppola declared bankruptcy as a direct result. Dean Tavoularis, the production designer, recreated the entire Las Vegas Strip and McCarran International Airport on sound stages at Coppola's Zoetrope Studios. Every inch of available space went to the Vegas Strip set. A full airport replica rose complete with a functional jetway and a jet airliner constructed from the nose section of a crashed plane. Neon artists Larry Albright and Bill Concannon invented a new process for 2mm diameter tubing just to make miniature Vegas signs work. Tavoularis called the Vegas Strip set a fire trap because of the wiring and flammable materials. Strikes demolished the sets after production wrapped. Zoetrope Studios eventually slipped from Coppola's hands due to financial difficulties, and he stated all his films in the 80s and 90s went toward paying off these debts. Tom Waits received an Oscar nomination for Best Musical Score. La La Land, Moulin Rouge, and Blade Runner 2049 all show the film's visual influence. Manhattan transformed into Oz in 1978 when The Wiz became what reporters called the most expensive musical film ever made. $22 to $24 million went into production while the box office generated $21 million, roughly breaking even theatrically but disappointing once marketing costs entered the picture. Universal estimated a $10.4 million net loss. Tony Walton, who'd won an Oscar for All That Jazz, turned the World Trade Center Plaza into the Emerald City with 27,000 light bulbs. A circular bridge between the Twin Towers served as the Wiz's throne. 26 miles of Congolium formed the Yellow Brick Road. Munchkinland took over the New York State Pavilion from the 1964 World's Fair, with children embedded in concrete walls that peel free. In 1981, Walton gave hundreds of production objects to the Museum of the Moving Image: costume maquettes, set models, scripts, storyboards, photographs, and props. Many remain on display in the museum's core exhibition today. Michael Jackson's theatrical debut introduced him to producer Quincy Jones, leading directly to Off the Wall and Thriller. Budget numbers for The 13th Warrior spiraled from $85 million to somewhere between $100 million and $150 million, $125 and $160 million. The 1999 film brought in $61.7 million worldwide, making it the biggest financial disaster of that year, with losses estimated up to $129 million. Wolf Kruger built an immense Viking longhouse and complete village at Elk Bay on the north-central coast of Vancouver Island, accessible only by float plane. Timber collected across Vancouver Island went into the main structure. Cave sequences filled a massive studio stage called A-Frame in Delta, British Columbia, measuring 10,000 square meters. Those dimensions stretched 200 meters long, 50 meters wide, and 20 meters tall. Lavish costumes represented 10th century Arabia and Norse cultures. Poor test screenings triggered extensive reshoots, with author Michael Crichton taking over directing duties, though he went uncredited. Release dates pushed back over a year. Jerry Goldsmith replaced the original musical score. The title changed from Eaters of the Gone to The 13th Warrior. Omar Sharif called it humiliating and said it convinced him to retire. A devoted cult following developed despite the disaster, with fans praising the lack of CGI and practical stunts. Comparisons to Game of Thrones and The Northman come up frequently. Disney's 2004 version of the Alamo watched its budget grow from $75 million to $107 million, with total costs reaching $140 million. Box office receipts totaled just $25.8 million worldwide. Disney took an $80+ million write-down and canceled most international theatrical releases. Michael Korenblith, Oscar-nominated for Apollo 13, constructed 51 to 52 acres of film sets in Dripping Springs, Texas, featuring 70 structures that recreated the historic compound. Buildings alone cost approximately $10 million, making it the largest set ever built in North America. Historians consider it the most accurate recreation ever built. Rigorous measurements match the famous church facade to the original. Unlike the 1960 version, this one skips the iconic bell-shaped facade, which the U.S. Army added 14 years after the battle. All interiors rose inside their corresponding exterior buildings. Abandonment came after filming wrapped, and deterioration began immediately. September 28, 2011 brought a lightning-caused wildfire that burned approximately 150 acres, damaging or destroying 9 major structures. The park's website made no mention of the movie as of 2020. Budget figures for the 2013 film 47 Ronin reached $175 to $225 million. Box office receipts totaled $151.8 million worldwide, resulting in a $120 to $175 million write-down. Variety called it one of Hollywood's biggest financial disasters of 2013. Origo Studios in Budapest hosted principal photography, where production crews built an entire feudal Japanese village. Shepperton Studios in London provided additional space for creating extensive Japanese environments. Penny Rose created 998 costumes and 400 suits of armor, an enormous undertaking requiring meticulous attention to period detail. November 2012 was the original release date, but delays hit twice, first for 3D effects work, then for extensive reshoots. Universal executives removed director Carl Rinch and took over post-production. Multiple editors attempted to salvage the footage, and the studio added scenes to boost Keanu Reeves' presence. Japan, where the story holds beloved status, saw disastrous performance, $1.3 million opening. Netflix released a standalone sequel called Blade of the 47 Ronin in 2022. Babylon's 2022 production budget sat at $80 million, with combined costs, including marketing, reaching $160 million. Box office receipts brought in just $64.3 million worldwide, with a catastrophic $3.6 million opening weekend. Deadline estimated $87.4 million in net losses. Florencia Martin built sets within sets within sets at Blue Sky Movie Ranch, showing multiple silent-era films being shot simultaneously. 1920s Los Angeles rose from the ground, recreated from barren desert to emerging cityscape. Actual 1920s-era Paramount sound stages underwent extensive retrofitting, removing modern safety equipment and repainting to period specifications. Financial failure didn't prevent the production design from winning the BAFTA Award for Best Production Design and receiving an Academy Award nomination. Justin Hurwitz took home the Golden Globe for Best Original Score. Damien Chazelle acknowledged that, in financial terms, Babylon didn't work at all. He won't receive a similar budget anytime soon. The film stands as evidence that non-franchise prestige films face increasing commercial challenges. The most expensive comedy ever made, Evan Almighty carried a budget of $175 million. Some estimates reached $210 million. Marketing added another $75 million. The 2007 film brought in $174.4 million worldwide, representing at least a $100 million loss. Crozet, Virginia, became home to a complete replica of the biblical ark, constructed to meet specifications, 450 feet long, 80 feet wide, 51 feet high. A concrete base supported the massive structure. Pictures from children's books crew members had read inspired the design. January 2006 marked the start of construction. Actors filmed building scenes during the day, while crew members continued construction at night. Multiple residential facades also rose for the fictional neighborhood. 1 week after filming wrapped, the ark came down. Another week removed the concrete base. Habitat for Humanity received all salvageable materials, and housing developments eventually covered the locations. Sony dropped out when the budget exceeded $140 million. Working with multiple species proved extremely difficult. Predatory animals couldn't share the set with monkeys. George Lucas's 1986 adaptation Howard the Duck cost $37 million and earned $38 million worldwide. Break even, right? Wrong. That figure actually represents approximately $20 million in losses. Frank Price, the Universal executive, resigned though he hadn't approved production. The Howard Duck suit became the first wireless freestanding animatronic costume in history. Even Yoda had wires. Foam latex rubber over plastic underskulls, metal mechanics, and acrylic eyes went into multiple suits. Ed Gale spent most of his time literally blind inside the costume. 50 sets rose across Northern California, including a 7-ton laser spectroscope at Hunters Point Naval Shipyard. Industrial Light and Magic handled effects while Phil Tippett designed the Dark Overlord monster. Strikes demolished the sets after production, though animatronic duck heads have appeared at auction. Heritage Auctions sold heads in 2024. Marvel Comics saw its first theatrical adaptation with this film, then refused to authorize another until Spider-Man. George Lucas sold ILM's graphics group to Steve Jobs for $5 million to recover losses. That division became Pixar. Seth Green voiced Howard in Guardians of the Galaxy films. A 2024 production budget of $168 million came with marketing reaching $108 million. Total price tag approximately $330 million. Box office receipts totaled $174.4 million worldwide. Losses exceed $156 million, despite a 90% Rotten Tomatoes score. Colin Gibson, returning from Fury Road, constructed numerous custom vehicles including modified war rigs, the villain's 6-wheeled command vehicle, the Cadillac Gigahorse, and various motorcycles. The Stowaway to Nowhere sequence, a 15-minute action showcase, consumed 78 shooting days using real stunt drivers on a 2.5-mile stretch of road. Practical effects trumped computer-generated imagery throughout filming. Advanced virtual production technology captured footage at 48 frames per second. Many vehicles from the previous film, including 11 hero vehicles, went up for tender in 2021, with some leased back. The franchise's future remains uncertain given the financial performance, including the announced sequel, The Wasteland. Disney took a $200 million write-down on 2012's John Carter, the largest in history. Production budget reached $263.7 million net after tax rebates. Marketing pushed total cost toward $400 million. Box office brought in $284 million worldwide, requiring $600 to $700 million to break even. Nathan Crowley, known for The Dark Knight, built a complete western town in Kanab, Utah, and designed elaborate flying ships plus Martian city environments for studios in England. Utah location filming spanned 12 weeks across Big Water, Lake Powell, Glen Canyon, Moab, and Hanksville. $19.7 to $21 million stayed in Utah. All technology got designed as if from an 1880s Industrial Revolution era. No fly-by-wire, exposed workings, manual labor-intensive. Andrew Stanton's habit of scrapping and reshooting footage, common at Pixar but expensive in live action, drove costs up dramatically. The title changed from John Carter of Mars to generic John Carter after Mars Needs Moms had poor reception. Rich Ross, the studio chief, resigned partly because of the film's failure. Budget for The Lone Ranger's 2013 release reached $225 to $250 million, with $150 million in marketing. Box office brought in $260.5 million worldwide. Disney announced a $160 to $190 million write-down. Break-even sat at $650 million. A 5-mile loop of railroad track circled a newly constructed Old West town in New Mexico. Materials included 3,889,000 pounds of rail and ties from Blythe, California, 60,000 pounds of bolts and track parts from Kansas City, and 402,000 pounds from Stockton. Single and double-track lines let Gore Verbinski film train sequences with real locomotives. Near Creede, Colorado, production spent 11 weeks building sets, installing railroad tracks, and a bridge. $7 million went to Creede from production. Demolition claimed the entire 5-mile railroad after filming. August 2011 nearly brought film cancellation over budget concerns. Verbinski, Bruckheimer, Depp, and Armie Hammer each deferred 20% of their salaries. Weather-damaged sets. A crew member lost their life by drowning, leading Cal OSHA to fine Disney $60,000. Guinness World Records lists Cutthroat Island as the biggest financial disaster of all time when adjusted for inflation. The 1995 Pirate Adventures budget escalated from $60 million to $115 million. Box office receipts totaled just $18.5 million worldwide. Carolco Pictures filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy 6 weeks before release. 2 massive wooden sailing vessels rose at $1 million each, designed to replicate 17th-century ships. Fire consumed 1 ship during production, requiring a complete rebuild. Mediterranean Film Studios in Malta housed entire seaport sets. Construction finished before director Renny Harlin arrived. Then he required expensive rebuilding. Production elements totaled over 2,000 costumes, 309 firearms, 620 swords, and 250 horses from Austria. Production disasters became legendary. Michael Douglas quit the project, citing an expanded role for Geena Davis. Multiple actors rejected the male lead: Tom Cruise, Keanu Reeves, Russell Crowe, Liam Neeson, Jeff Bridges, Ralph Fiennes, and many others. Raw sewage flooded the water tanks during filming. Malta sets got destroyed after production, and miniature ship models exploded during sequences. The pirate genre stayed dormant for nearly a decade until Pirates of the Caribbean, the most expensive film ever made at its 1995 release. Waterworld carried a production budget of $175 million. Total costs reached approximately $235 million, including marketing. Box office brought in $264 million worldwide, initially considered a loss, though home video eventually turned a profit. A floating artificial atoll served as the film's primary set, costing $22 million alone, the same amount Kevin Costner personally invested. 1/4 mile in circumference, weighing over 1,000 tons, it required 8 base floats constructed by Lockheed Martin's subsidiary Navitec. All available steel in Hawaii went into construction, with additional steel flown in from California. A seafaring license classified it as an unmanned vessel. Production towed it to sea 5 times, positioning it 1 mile offshore. $500,000 went into each trimaran. Bathrooms didn't exist on any sets. Cast and crew needed transport to nearby ships. Kevin Reynolds left before completion because of conflicts with Costner. Joss Whedon, brought in for rewrites, described it as 7 weeks of hell. A hurricane sank the slave colony 100 feet into the harbor. Environmental concerns led to dismantling the atoll, but the designs inspired Waterworld, a live sea war spectacular stunt show which opened October 21st, 1995 at Universal Studios Hollywood. 4 Universal parks worldwide now operate the attraction, which won a 1996 Thea Award. The most notorious financial disaster in Hollywood history belongs to Heaven's Gate. Michael Cimino's 1980 Western started with an $11.6 million budget that ballooned to $44 million. Box office brought in just $3.5 million domestically. United Artists got sold to MGM, ending over 60 years as an independent studio. An entire town called Sweetwater rose from scratch on the east shore of Two Medicine Lake in Glacier National Park, Montana. Specific photographs guided every costume design. 6 feet. That's how much wider Cimino decided the street needed, so the entire city block got torn down and rebuilt. 150 carpenters worked in 4 crews across 3 states. The roller skating rink set measured 100 feet long. Simple scenes got shot 50-plus times, with some actors reporting 32 takes, while Cimino waited for perfect cloud formations. 8 months of shooting produced 1.3 million feet of footage. Harvard refused filming permission for the prologue, so Cimino insisted on $3 million additional dollars to shoot at Oxford. Removal came for the town set after filming. Cimino personally purchased 156 acres of Montana land. By 1984, it sat for sale with no takers. The auteur era of director-driven Hollywood ended with this film, and Cimino's career never recovered. Warm reception greeted a restored cut at the 2012 Venice Film Festival. $2 billion combined went into these 16 films building worlds that audiences never embraced. Yet their physical sets, the 5-mile railroads, the 1,000-ton floating cities, the biblical arks, represent something more valuable than box office returns. They stand as monuments to the belief that practical craftsmanship matters. Cult classic status arrived for many, their elaborate sets continuing to inspire filmmakers decades later. Demolition and Harbor Rust may have claimed the sets, but the ambition lives on in every frame.